Hi, everyone, and welcome to the webinar to introduce our new feature, UNIFI Core Project Analytics. My name is Julie Grondin. I'm the Product Marketing Director for UNIFI Labs. I'm joined by Jay Merlan, our in-house BIM specialist. You want to say hi, Jay?
Hi, everyone.
I want to thank you all for joining our public launch webinar. We're incredibly excited to communicate some of these amazing new features to you. So before we delve into project analytics, we're going to quickly review the UNIFI suite of solutions. We'll then introduce UNIFI Core Project Analytics. We'll then transition to a live demonstration led by Jay, and we'll then open the floor up for Q&A. There is a Q&A feature on the Zoom window, so if you want, you can continue to ask questions throughout the entire demonstration and presentation. And once we get to the Q&A phase, we'll go into that and start revisiting all the different questions. So you can ask the questions as we're going, and we'll answer those once we get to the end. So let's get started. As you may be aware, the UNIFI suite of solutions consists of 3 distinct products and services. We have UNIFI Core, our content management and now analytics platform. We have UNIFI Create, our custom content creation services, and we have UNIFI Connect, our quality-controlled manufacturer content library. UNIFI Core is a Revit integrated cloud-based content management system that helps BIM managers deliver healthier and higher quality models faster through effective library and model management. Among the many things that UNIFI Core does to help BIM managers on a day-to-day basis, overall, UNIFI Core helps support model health and quality by promoting the use of approved content through library organization and access control. I'd like to go into more detail about how UNIFI's approach to content management differs from other methods, specifically the practice of storing content in folders. When you organize your content library in folders, you can run into a number of less than ideal situations. Most in-house server-based folder systems don't have the best access control. So when you share access to a folder with a designer or design team, you run the risk of having content added or altered by other people. So in this case right here, this is a library that started off in a folder system, and then the folder gets shared. But based on the access control, these designers have an opportunity to go in and maybe revise the content, or actually create their own folders and pull that content out and make a whole bunch of revisions that they can also share that folder with other designers. And this becomes more or less what people are using, and you don't have any visibility because it may exist outside of your actual folder structure. The other problem is that when you're sending this stuff outside to additional design teams or additional firms that you're working with, it's very difficult to track what's going on with it. You kind of send it out and it's gone. Part of the problem is that you now have multiple versions of the same families in multiple folders, and you really don't know where they're being stored or used, and you don't necessarily know what's going on with it. This is going to be very labor intensive now to try and keep this content up to date, because you may revise versions in your folder, but none of these are actually getting updated or revised. UNIFI Core doesn't use a folder system. With our solution, you manage one master library housed in the cloud. And instead of creating folders and duplicating content to supply different teams the content they need, you can keep one master library and grant access to different selections of content at the user level or group level for both internal and external teams. So you start with your master library and nothing necessarily changes it, and you basically just assign access to the different pieces of content or different groups of content at the user level, at the group level, and both internal and external. Since everything's on the cloud, it's really easy to share. Users cannot add or alter your library. This is something only admins can do, and sometimes there's only one admin at a company, and that's the BIM manager. You have complete control over what's going on within your library. We provide a great solution for library management, but what about when design teams access unapproved content outside of UNIFI Core and then place it in the model? Stuff gets in there and causes problems, and you can't see it. And this makes maintaining the overall integrity of the model difficult because you can't fix what you can't see. Well, the days of limited visibility are over because we're introducing UNIFI Core Project Analytics. UNIFI Core Project Analytics is a model health monitoring and diagnostics platform that can help you identify project and model health issues before they become big problems. There's a lot you can do with the new feature, and just to name a few, you can monitor what's being added to models. So when designers are adding, families to the model that they're not supposed to be using, you'll be able to identify that as soon as it happens. You can set up health indicators with custom thresholds to alert you when things become problematic. So you can set up different indicators to alert you when different things are happening, and they're based on your specific thresholds. So if you're able to, if you have different tolerances on different projects or different firm standards of tolerances for the amount of warnings or issues that you might experience within the model, you can set those specifics so it's not a really, really light trigger or a really lax trigger. You can also triage Revit warnings into non-urgent and urgent categories. So as the Revit warnings come in, you can categorize them if they're urgent or not, and also set thresholds as to how many your project's able to tolerate. So you don't end up with all these Revit warnings kind of going everywhere. It comes in and it actually will automatically triage them. It will give you the power to detect the issues and drill down into the specific causes within the model so you can get things fixed fast. One of the issues right now is when sync times start to slow down, you're not necessarily sure what's causing it. Revit may crash completely because of something that was added to the model and you're not sure, and it becomes a needle in a haystack detective work, trying to figure out what happened. With all of this, you'll be able to have that information. You can drill down into what sync started the issue, what families were added at that sync, what was changed at that specific moment, and who actually synced to central at the user level. So you can go and drill down, figure out what went wrong, and go right to the person who may have triggered the incident and have them correct it. The best part is if you're using UNIFI Core for library management, you can get project analytics set up in minutes. It's just 3 simple steps and you're up and tracking. There's no coding, there's no complex integrations, and there's no steep learning curves to get this up and running. So right now, if you're a current UNIFI Core customer, or if you become a UNIFI Core customer within the next couple months, so basically until the end of this year, you'll get 20 project you'll be able to start tracking 20 concurrent projects for free. So there won't be any costs and stuff associated with you being able to kick the tires on this. So you'll be up and running using UNIFI Core to be able to streamline all of your content management and library management needs. And you'll also be able to start tracking and monitoring 20 projects for free. And this is introductory for 2018. So at this point right now, I'm going to pass things over to Jay so that Jay can take you through an actual demonstration of how project analytics looks, feels, and works.
All right, thanks, Julie. So before I actually get started, I want to mention that we have a Q&A tool built into Zoom. So as the questions come to you, please use that tool to just start queuing up the questions, and then towards the end during our Q&A session, Julie will help facilitate the answering of those questions. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. And here I always like to start off with clarifying some terminology in the context of our project analytics platform, because we actually have 3 levels of viewing data and each with their own dashboard. So I think it's important to highlight these terms, because what we call a project in Revit is not what we call a project in project analytics, and I realize this can be confusing. So starting right at the top, the company level is actually your project space. So at this level, you have the ability to view analytics for your entire company. So if you're looking at this diagram, all of the data is aggregated from the model level through the project level and so on. Down to the project level, again, these are not to be confused with Revit projects. These can be considered containers for Revit models. So if you look down at the model level, we're illustrating that here. You can have multiple models aggregated into a project. And then at the model level, we actually will allow you to drill down, as you'll see shortly here, and even not only gather analytics for particular models, but also be able to view the content within those models. Okay, so just jumping into the UNIFI Core application. So this is for current customers. You actually have access to the project space through the UNIFI portal here. So if you were to just click on that icon, it actually takes you to the dashboard, which you are probably all accustomed to seeing if you're a current UNIFI Core customer. Now, the new features are actually added here in project space, and you'll see that we've built this out with the new features. So again, here we're at the company level. So here at the very top. So what you're seeing here in this dashboard is an aggregate of all of the models and all of the projects within your organization. So we're showing you sync times for the week. You can actually hover over each one of these columns and it'll show you which model that was synced at which date and time. We're giving you an average sync time and the longest sync time here just for the week. Moving over here to total projects, we're just giving you an idea of your organization's total number of projects that you're currently tracking in project analytics. And here we're giving you the option to, we do give you the option to turn analytics on and off for projects. And I like to highlight this portion of the dashboard because this is actually the number that contributes to the 20 projects that Julie had mentioned earlier. So again, for current UNIFI customers, if you start to see your number reaching 20, maybe it's time to reach out to us to see how we can work some additional projects into your licenses. All right, moving down to this is an analytic that just shows you the number of unique team members in your active projects. Hopefully you'll have more than one. Down here is where we really get into the important stuff though. So we're looking at health indicators. So with Revit warnings, every row in the health indicator table is what we've identified as key indicators of model health. So you'll notice there are also columns for needs attention, caution, and acceptable. And we'll get into those settings when we get to the project level. But for now, it's important to understand that you actually, as an administrator, have control over what you consider a point where you need to give your project attention versus what's acceptable. So since we're looking at the health indicators, let's just talk about Revit warnings for a second. We actually realize that different firms have different ways they categorize Revit warnings. So something that you consider a critical Revit warning might not be another firm's idea of a critical warning. So over here in settings, we're actually tracking every Revit warning in your models, and we allow your administrators to actually then go and categorize which ones your firm would consider critical, non-critical, or you can completely choose to ignore it, which means it won't show up on your health indicator table at all. And moving down the line here to Revit version checks. So this is if you've ever run into a corrupt Revit model, you know that one of the potential issues could be the Revit minor version. And this is a problem that is more abundant in C4R or BIM 360 design projects where the minor version is known to really cause that corrupt model. So here we're actually able to check to see that all of your users based on a model are using the same minor version. So here you can see I have a green check, and that means that all users have actually the same Revit major and minor versions. If you had some users in a different minor version, it would turn into a yellow icon, and if there were a different major version, which could definitely cause issues, it would turn into a red icon. Over here, the top 10 families. I think this table says a lot about content quality within your models because as you can see here, since you are using UNIFI Core as your content management system, you can now see what came from your standard library and what didn't. And you can even see how many times across your organization a particular piece of content has been used. So this is great for identifying when non-standard families are being used consistently, and maybe it's time to vet that family and roll it into your standard library. Down here at the very bottom, we've got the project admin activity table, and this is basically an activity stream of all of your projects in Project Analytics. So if you look here at this line item, it's actually describing that this project went from being active to archived. It gives you the date and time that status had changed and who had made the change. All right, so that was the project space or the company level. So now we're going to jump down into the project level. And remember, this is a container for multiple Revit projects. So when you click on projects here, you're given a list of the projects within your organization. I'm just going to click on demo project. And this is an aggregate of multiple models. So when it's starting here with the health score, what you're seeing here is actually an average health score over the multiple models that live within this particular project. Over here, we show you a graph of historical health scores. And then down here, again, we've got the health indicators. And if you were to expand the warnings, you'll see now we actually have broken down the rows into Revit models. So you can actually see the number of critical Revit warnings in each model. And you can even break it down even further with CAD imports and sync time in seconds and things of that nature. And again, since we're at the project level, when you expand these health indicators, we are now able to view the individual Revit model data. Again, down here, we're just giving you the exact Revit warnings that we're catching that are critical in this particular project, no non-criticals and no uncategorized warnings. Down here, we can, let me expand the data set here, and you can actually view the sync times and file size over time. So I like this graph because it can help you identify if there were issues, whether it's a network issue or a model health issue. Let's use this as an example. You've got a column that, the column is the sync time and the line is actually the file size. So the column increased, yet the file size stayed the same. So perhaps this was an indication that there might have been a network connectivity issue or some other hardware related issue not related to model health. And here, where you see the file size jump up, but actually sync time reduced, perhaps that's a good sign of actually a healthy model, that even though your file size jumped up quite a bit, almost twice as large, your sync time actually went down. Okay, so now that we've covered the project level, we're now going to jump into the model level. So if I were to click on the models tab here, you can see all the models that are added to this project, and you can drill down into this model. So again, just for further clarification, we're down at the lowest level of dashboards right now. So here we've covered quite a bit of this already. There isn't much new information here, but where it gets really interesting is up in these two tabs here. So the content and compare changes tabs. So let's go ahead and jump into content. And earlier, Julie had mentioned that the days of limited model visibility are over, and this is exactly what she's referring to here. So when we're talking about content within a model, with project analytics, you now have the ability to view things like work sets, the schedules that live within the model, sheets, but a lot of different types of content, including CAD links. So maybe as a BIM manager, you want to keep an eye on CAD links and CAD imports. But here's where it gets really interesting is when we start talking about families. So what we're looking at here is, I'm just going to jump down to this table first, but this is basically a list of all of the families that have been associated with this Revit model. So you can see here, let's use this as an example here, this exhaust grill. You can see that this exhaust grill has been placed twice. It is a standard UNIFI. It did come from the UNIFI core application, meaning it's from your standard library. And we're even able to track the version of the family that exists in this project. So you'll see at the table header here, it says UNIFI revision in model. So in this model, we have version 5 of the family, but in the UNIFI core, we actually have version 17. So at this point, as BIM manager or model manager, you can identify this as a potential issue and decide whether or not you need to go in and update that family within this model. And up here at the top, we have a legend that actually also acts as a filtering mechanism. So if you wanted to just view UNIFI content here, or if you were doing a QA process and you just wanted to see what non-UNIFI families are being used in this model, you can filter it this way. Okay, so last but not least, the compare changes, and this is an extremely powerful feature of project analytics, in my opinion. So what we're actually able to do is track changes between syncs. So I'm actually just kind of paging over to something that actually shows some valuable data here. So by tracking changes between syncs, we're able to see between two syncs what exactly changed within each model. So if I were to just expand families, you can see that between these two syncs, Megan had removed 6 return diffusers. She removed 40 supply diffusers and so on. So we're able to actually track what this user has done, which in my experience has been historically not possible. Over here, if we go down to rooms, we're even able to see that the area of a room changed to 0, which is interesting because that could be a red flag that maybe the room boundary was omitted or a wall was deleted, so the room is not actually calculating properly. So yes, track changes, extremely powerful, and I've seen other tools that will track changes more on a visual and geometry level where they'll highlight different objects to show you that something had changed position. But here I like this feature because we're actually showing it to you in terms of data, so you can actually start to identify exactly what had changed without having to look at a visual cue. Okay, so that sums up the overview of our dashboards and our analytics. And now what I'd like to do is just briefly show everyone how to create a project and how easy it is. So here I am at the company level. Basically, I go to the projects tab and create a new project. So I'm just going to go ahead and call it new project. Maybe I'll call it new project 2, since there's already a new project. Opt in to gather project analytics. So this is an important setting because we want to make sure that you are explicitly choosing to opt in to gather analytics. So by default, this is intentionally off. And as the admin, you need to tell us that it is okay to gather analytics on this project. So here's setting an office location. You can actually choose the office location which is managing this particular project. And this is helpful, obviously, for multi-office organizations. It helps you can kind of see it in the background here. You can start to filter these projects by location. So really helpful for larger organizations that will have, potentially hundreds of projects. Here we've got the project status, which you saw on the company level dashboard. Typically, you'll want to start off inactive. And I should mention that there are some additional settings here. So these can sort of act as templates. So basically, you can copy settings from previous projects if you wish. So I'll go ahead and create the project. You'll see that it's appeared here, new project 2. So when I go to click on it, you'll notice that I'm actually prompted with a message that says no analytics for this project because it doesn't have any models yet. So the final step is actually to go ahead and add models to this project. Now it's important to know here that this list is populated by models that the user first has to launch the UNIFI core application and then open the model and then run a sync, and then that will make your model visible to the to project analytics. So once it's visible here, you can start to filter. So again, if for larger organizations with several Revit models under their belt, you can actually filter these. So if I just were to type in demo, for example, you can see that we're filtering by model name. And it's also important to know that you can actually filter by model path as well. So if you know the username or a specific piece of the path that you want to filter by, you can actually filter it that way as well. And once you click add to project, the model gets added to the project and you're off and running. So one piece that I did skip over at the beginning is these analytics. The data is actually gathered with every user sync. So once you've created the project, added the models to that project, and your users start to sync, that's when the data will start to get collected. So this isn't a task-based or scheduled type of application or add-on. All right, so that wraps up my piece of the live demo. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to Julie, and she will help us out with the Q&A.